The alien child's scream pierced through the diplomatic chamber as Ambassador Cathara collapsed, her blue-scaled hands clutching her throat. Queen Helena rose from her throne, her emerald gown rustling in the sudden silence. The Zephyrian delegation froze, their crystalline features reflecting the chamber's golden light like fractured mirrors. "Poison," Captain Marcus whispered, his hand moving to his plasma sword. The royal guard formed an instant perimeter around the queen, their movements precise and silent, Helena's eyes fixed on the small figure cowering behind the fallen ambassador. A young Zephyrian girl, no more than 12 in human years, her silver hair trembling like starlight. The girl's violet eyes darted between the dying ambassador and the advancing guards. Her thin voice cracked as she spoke in broken galactic standard. She tried to make me bond. I said no. I said no! Elder Vexthai stepped forward, his ancient face carved from living crystal. Your Majesty, the child speaks of the sacred bonding. It is our most holy... Sacred? The word came from the girl like a blade. She backed against the chamber wall, her small hands glowing with an energy Helena had never seen before. Sacred like the others? Like my sister? The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Ice crystals began forming on the marble floors around the child's feet.
The Zephyrian delegation stepped away from her, their faces showing not concern but disgust.
Abomination! Elder Vexthai hissed. She refuses the gift of our people. She is cursed. Helena watched the child's power spread across the floor in delicate patterns. Beautiful. Deadly. The girl was shaking now, not from cold, but from something deeper. Terror. The same terror Helena had seen in her own mirror years ago when the crown was forced upon her head. Commander Sarah Chen moved closer to Helena's side. Your Majesty, our scanners show the child's biosignature is off the charts. Whatever she's doing, it's affecting the ship's systems. The lights flickered. The ambassador's breathing grew weaker. Please... the child whispered, looking directly at Helena. I don't want to hurt anyone, I just want to go home. But Henrik, Helena's chief advisor, was already speaking to the Zephyrian elder. The terms of the alliance require no. Helena's voice cut through the negotiations like a sword. She stepped down from the throne platform, ignoring Marcus's sharp intake of breath. Protocol demanded she remain elevated, protected. Protocol had never faced a terrified child with the power to freeze stars. The girl's violet eyes tracked Helena's approach. The ice spread faster, reaching the boots of the royal guard. But Helena kept walking until she stood 3 feet from the child, close enough to see the tears freezing on her pale cheeks. What's your name? Helena asked softly. Lyra. The word came out like a prayer. Lyra, I'm Helena. Will you tell me about your sister? The child's glow intensified. The ambassador gasped her last breath. Elder Vexthai began chanting in the old tongue, but his words felt hollow against the weight of the girl's pain. They made her bond, Lyra whispered, with the patriarch's son. She was only 14. She tried to say no, but they held her down, and the girl couldn't finish. Her power pulsed outward, and several decorative fountains froze solid. Helena felt the familiar burn of rage in her chest. She had been 16 when they tried to marry her off to secure a trade agreement. The scar on her palm from where she'd gripped her father's sword still ached in cold weather. What happened to her? She died. 3 months after the bonding. They said it was natural, that some minds can't handle the connection. But I saw what it did to her. How it ate away at who she was until there was nothing left. The chamber fell silent except for the crackling of ice. Wadian could feel the eyes of both delegations on her, waiting for her to speak. The alliance with the Zephyrian Empire hung in the balance. Their technology could end humanity's war with the Thrakari. Their refusal could doom billions. But standing here, looking into Lyra's terrified eyes, Helena saw only a child who had watched her sister's soul consumed by tradition. Elder Vexthai, Helena said without turning around. Explain the sacred bonding. It is the joining of 2 minds, Your Majesty, the sharing of essence that creates perfect unity between... Against her will? Silence stretched like a wire about to snap. The will of the individual is... secondary to the needs of the collective. Helena nodded slowly. She had heard those words before, in different languages, from different mouths, always used to justify the breaking of someone smaller, someone with less power. Lyra's ice had reached the throne now. The girl was crying openly, her power beyond her control. Helena could see the exhaustion in her young face, the desperate need for someone to tell her she wasn't a monster. The queen made her choice. She knelt in the ice, her knees hitting the frozen marble with a sharp crack. The entire chamber gasped. Queens did not kneel. Queens did not lower themselves. Queens maintained dignity above all else. But Helena was no longer thinking like a queen. She was thinking like a woman who remembered what it felt like to be trapped. The temperature in the diplomatic chamber continued to plummet as Queen Helena knelt before the Zephyrian child. Frost spread across the walls in intricate patterns that seemed to mirror Lyra's emotional state, beautiful and chaotic, deadly and delicate. The royal guard shifted uncomfortably, their breath visible in the suddenly arctic air. "Your Majesty," Henrik hissed through chattering teeth, "the Alliance can wait." Helena's voice carried absolute authority, cutting through her advisor's protests. She extended her hand toward Lyra, palm up, moving slowly as one would approach a wounded animal. "Lyra, I need you to look at me." The girl's violet eyes, wide with terror and power she couldn't control, found Helena's face. Tears had frozen to her cheeks like diamonds, and her silver hair whipped around her head as if caught in an invisible storm of her own making. "I see you," Helena said simply. "Not what they want you to be. Not what they're trying to make you become. I see you, Lyra. And you don't have to be afraid anymore." Elder Vexthai's crystalline features twisted with disapproval. "Your Majesty disrespects our sacred traditions. The child's resistance brings shame upon her bloodline. The bonding would heal her defiance." Captain Marcus took a step forward, his hand still resting on his weapon. "Sir, with respect, that sounds less like healing and more like enslavement." Helena finished the thought, never taking her eyes from Lyra. "Tell me, Elder, what happens to those who refuse the bonding?" "They are cast out, exiled from Zephyrian space. They become nothing, nothing." Helena repeated the word like it tasted bitter. "And those who accept it, they become part of something greater. Their individual concerns fade. They find peace." Helena had heard similar words from the Terran Council when they'd tried to force her into a political marriage. Peace through surrender. Unity through the sacrifice of self. The same lies dressed in prettier language. Lyra's power pulsed again, and the chamber's temperature dropped another 10 degrees. Ice began forming on the ceremonial weapons mounted on the walls. The girl was losing control, her young mind overwhelmed by fear and the weight of her abilities. "Lyra," Helena said gently, "may I tell you about my sister?" The child's power flickered, curiosity momentarily overriding terror. Helena took it as permission to continue. "Her name was Catherine. She was brilliant, could speak 7 languages, negotiate peace treaties, make anyone laugh. But our father believed her value lay only in who she could marry. When she refused his choice of husband, he locked her in the tower until she agreed." Commander Chen stepped closer, her hand moving to Helena's shoulder in a protective gesture that would normally breach protocol. But protocol seemed meaningless in this frozen chamber where a child's pain threatened to tear apart the fabric of space itself. "What happened?" Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible. "She agreed to the marriage to protect me from the same fate. The man our father chose was cruel. Catherine lasted 2 years before she..." Helena paused, the old wound still tender, before she decided oblivion was preferable to that kind of peace. The ice around Lyra's feet began to crack and shift. Helena could feel the child's attention entirely focused on her words. "When I became queen, I swore no one under my protection would face that choice. You are under my protection now, Lyra." "Impossible," Elder Vexthai interjected. "She is Zephyrian. Your laws have no authority. My laws have authority wherever I choose to enforce them." Helena rose to her feet, ice cascading from her gown like fallen stars. When she turned to face the Zephyrian delegation, her expression carried the weight of absolute sovereignty, "And I choose to enforce them here." The elder's crystalline face flushed with anger. "You would destroy an alliance that could save billions of human lives for the sake of one defective child? I would destroy any alliance built on the suffering of children." Helena's words rang through the chamber like a bell. If your technology comes at the price of Lyra's freedom, then humanity will find another way. Behind her, she heard Lyra's sharp intake of breath. The girl's power was stabilizing, the chaotic ice patterns becoming more symmetrical, more controlled. Hope was a powerful force, Helena had learned, sometimes more powerful than fear. The Thrakari fleets approach your borders, Vexthai warned. Without our weapons, your people will fall, all for the sake of one child's selfish desires. Helena felt the familiar weight of impossible choices settling on her shoulders. She had carried such burdens since the crown was placed on her head, the needs of the many balanced against the rights of the few. But standing here, watching Lyra struggle with forces beyond her understanding, Helena realized some choices weren't impossible at all. They were just difficult for people who had forgotten how to be human. Perhaps, Helena said quietly, the Thrakari aren't our only option for allies. She gestured toward Lyra, whose ice had formed complex geometric patterns across the floor, patterns that seemed to pulse with their own inner light, beautiful, purposeful, unlike anything Helena had seen in Zephyrian or human technology. Tell me, Lyra, Helena said, kneeling again to match the child's height. What exactly can you do? For the first time since the crisis began, Lyra smiled. It was a small thing, fragile as winter sunlight, but it carried within it the promise of hope. And in a chamber filled with frozen possibilities, hope was the most dangerous force of all. Queen Helena watched as Lyra's smile transformed her young face, washing away the terror that had gripped her moments before. The patterns in the ice beneath their feet began to shift and dance, as if responding to the child's emotional state. What Helena had initially perceived as chaotic destruction now revealed itself as something far more sophisticated. A complex crystalline matrix that hummed with barely contained energy. I can feel the ice, Lyra said, her voice growing stronger. Not just make it. I can feel its structure, its possibilities. Watch. She placed her small hand on the frozen floor and the ice began to reshape itself. Slowly, impossibly. It rose from the ground in elegant spirals, forming delicate towers that reached toward the chamber's vaulted ceiling. Captain Marcus lowered his hand from his weapon, his military mind immediately grasping the implications. Defensive structures. She's creating fortifications from nothing but water vapor. Elder Vexthai's crystalline features darkened. Untrained power is dangerous. Without the bonding to guide her, she will destroy everything she touches. Will I? Lyra turned to Helena, uncertainty creeping back into her voice. In the stories they tell about unbonded children, they always hurt people. They can't control themselves. Helena studied the intricate ice formations surrounding them. Each structure was perfectly balanced, mathematically precise in its construction. This wasn't the work of an out-of-control child. This was artistry. Who tells these stories, Lyra? The elders, the bonded ones. They say unbonded children are like storms, all fury and no purpose. Commander Chen stepped forward, her scanner in hand. Your Majesty, the energy readings from these structures are incredible. They're not just ice. They're some kind of crystalline matrix that could revolutionize our defensive capabilities. Henrik, ever the politician, seized on the implications immediately. If what the commander says is true, perhaps we don't need Zephyrian technology after all. You understand nothing, Vexthai spat. The child's power will consume her. Without bonding, Zephyrian children die by their 16th year. The energy burns them out from within. Lyra's ice creations flickered and began to melt. The child stepped back, fear returning to her violet eyes. Die? Helena felt a cold rage that had nothing to do with Lyra's powers. How convenient that the only cure for their condition requires surrendering their will to your people. It is not convenience. It is necessity. The bonding creates a mental network that distributes the energy load across multiple minds. Without it, the child's brain cannot handle the strain. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the Queen's personal physician, had been silent until now. She stepped forward, her medical instincts overriding diplomatic protocol. Your Majesty, may I examine the child? With your permission, Lyra. Lyra looked to Helena, who nodded encouragingly. The doctor approached slowly, her portable scanner humming to life. After several minutes of careful examination, she looked up with a puzzled expression. The child's neural pathways are unlike anything in our medical databases, but I'm not seeing signs of deterioration or strain. If anything, her brain patterns suggest remarkable adaptation to the energy flow. Impossible, Vexthai declared. Is it? Helena turned to face the elder directly. Or is it impossible for you to admit that your sacred bonding might be unnecessary? The truth hit Helena like a physical blow. The bonding wasn't about helping Zephyrian children control their abilities. It was about controlling the children themselves. The stories of untrained children dying were lies designed to justify a system that turned gifted individuals into compliant tools. How many children have died refusing the bonding, Elder? Vexthai's silence was answer enough. And how many have died accepting it? Again, silence. Lyra had been listening to every word, her young mind processing the implications faster than Helena had expected. The girl's power surged again, but this time it felt different, focused, purposeful. The melting ice reformed into new shapes, harder and more complex than before. They lied, Lyra whispered. My sister. They told her she would die without the bonding, but she didn't die from her powers. She died from what they did to her mind. The ice around Lyra began to sing, a low harmonic vibration that resonated through the chamber. Helena had heard similar sounds in the ancient crystal caverns of Proxima 7, where natural formations created music from ambient energy. Lyra, can you control the singing? The child nodded and the pitch shifted, becoming higher, more complex. The sound waves caused the remaining ice to restructure itself into increasingly sophisticated patterns. Within minutes, Lyra had created what could only be described as a frozen instrument, capable of producing dozens of harmonic frequencies simultaneously. Captain Marcus was recording everything on his tactical scanner. Your Majesty, the frequencies she's generating could disrupt Thrakari's shield harmonics. This isn't just defensive capability, it's a weapon system. Elder Vexthai's face had gone pale beneath his crystalline skin. You don't understand what you're dealing with. The child's power will grow. Without proper guidance, she'll have proper guidance, Helena interrupted. From teachers who see her as a person, not a resource to be exploited. The Queen turned to address her senior staff. Commander Chen, I want our best scientists working on understanding Lyra's abilities. Dr. Martinez, full medical support to ensure her health and well-being. Captain Marcus, assess the strategic implications of her capabilities. And the Alliance? Henrik asked quietly. Helena looked back at Lyra, who was creating increasingly beautiful patterns in the ice, her young face alight with joy as she explored the full range of her abilities for the first time. The child had spent her life being told she was broken, defective, dangerous. In the span of an hour, she was discovering she was magnificent. The Alliance was built on lies, Helena said firmly. I won't be party to a civilization that treats children as commodities. Elder Vexthai gathered his robes around him, his crystalline features set in rigid disapproval. You make a grave mistake, human queen. The Thrakari will come, and when they do, you will remember this moment. You will remember the choice you made for one child over billions of lives. Helena met his gaze steadily. I will remember choosing to believe in the potential of the innocent. History will judge which of us chose wisely. As the Zephyrian delegation prepared to leave, Lyra tugged at Helena's gown. Your Majesty? What happens to me now? Helena knelt once more, taking the child's small hands in her own. Now, Lyra, you get to discover who you really are. The ice around them pulsed with warm light, as if reflecting the hope blooming in a young girl's heart. For the first time in years, Helena felt certain they were walking the right path, regardless of where it led. Elder! Vexthai paused at the chamber doors, his voice carrying across the frozen space with cold finality. The Thrakari know of the child's existence. They have been monitoring Zephyrian space for centuries, searching for the unbonded ones. You have just declared war on two civilizations, human queen. The words hit Helena like ice water. Around her, the royal guard immediately shifted into defensive positions, their hands moving to weapons with practiced efficiency. Captain Marcus stepped closer to Lyra, his protective instincts overriding diplomatic protocol. What do you mean they know of her? Helena demanded. The Thrakari Empire was built on absorbing the abilities of other species. They have been hunting unbonded Zephyrian children for 3 centuries. Why do you think we created the bonding system in the first place? The truth struck Helena with devastating clarity. The bonding wasn't just about control, it was about protection. A protection so complete it erased the individual to save them from something worse. And she had just removed that protection from a 12-year-old child. Lyra's ice pattern suddenly turned sharp and jagged, reflecting her growing fear. They're coming for me? Not just coming, Vextai continued with what might have been satisfaction. They are already here. 3 Thrakari science vessels entered your system 6 hours ago. They have been waiting for us to complete our negotiations before making their own proposal. Commander Chen was already at her communication console, her fingers flying over the controls, confirming hostile vessels at the system perimeter. They're broadcasting a diplomatic request for audience. Diplomatic, Marcus spat, right up until they get their hands on the child. Helena's mind raced through the implications. The Thrakari were known for their biological warfare capabilities, weapons that adapted and evolved, turning a species' greatest strengths into their greatest weaknesses. If they captured Lyra, studied her abilities, what kind of horrors could they create? Elder, return to your ship immediately, Helena commanded. Whatever our differences, the Thrakari are a threat to both our peoples, no longer. Vexthai's crystalline features shifted into what might have been a smile. We have reached an accommodation with them. A trade agreement. They leave Zephyrian space alone, and we provide them with what they seek. Horror of it settled over Helena like a shroud. You were gonna give them Lyra. The child was never meant to leave the ship alive, Queen Helena. The bonding ritual was simply a more palatable fiction than explaining to humanity that their alliance required the sacrifice of one defective Zephyrian child. Lyra's scream of rage shattered the air. Ice erupted from every surface in the chamber, not the controlled artistic creations from before, but sharp, deadly spears that shot toward the Elder. Only Vexthai's lightning-fast reflexes and crystalline skin saved him from being impaled. Lyra, stop! Helena commanded, but the child was beyond hearing. The betrayal, the terror, the realization that everyone she had trusted was complicit in her planned execution. It all poured out in a torrent of crystalline fury. The chamber's walls began to crack under the pressure of expanding ice. Warning alarms blared as the ship's hull integrity monitors detected the structural stress. If Lyra couldn't regain control, she would destroy them all. The child proves our point, Vexthai said with frustrating calm as he dodged another ice spear. Unbonded power without limits. This is why the Thrakari want them. This is why they must be controlled or eliminated. Helena realized they had walked into a carefully laid trap. The Zephyrians had never intended to honor any alliance. They had come to deliver Lyra to the Thrakari and eliminate any witnesses. The diplomatic mission was a facade. But as Helena watched Lyra's agony transform the chamber into a frozen hellscape, she saw something else. Purpose. Direction. The child wasn't attacking randomly. She was creating barriers, fortifications, defensive positions. Even in her rage, Lyra's tactical instincts were remarkable. Captain, Helena commanded over the chaos, escort the Zephyrian delegation off the ship. Now. Gladly, Your Majesty. As Marcus and his guards moved to comply, Helena approached Lyra. The child was floating 3 feet off the ground, surrounded by a whirlwind of ice and snow, her violet eyes blazing with power and fury. Lyra, look at me! The child's attention snapped to Helena, and for a moment the ice storm paused. They lied about everything, Lyra said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the frozen walls sing in response. My sister, the bonding, all of it. They were going to kill me. Yes, Helena agreed simply. But they failed. And now we know what we're really facing. Commander Chen's voice cut through the chamber's strange acoustics. Your Majesty, the Thrakari vessels are moving closer. They're requesting permission to dock. Helena looked around the frozen chamber at her staff taking defensive positions, at the child whose power could reshape reality itself, still floating in a sphere of crystalline energy. The Thrakari wanted Lyra for a reason. The Zephyrians feared her for a reason. Perhaps it was time to show both civilizations exactly what they should be afraid of. Open a channel to the Thrakari vessels, Helena commanded. Let's see what they're willing to offer for something they can't have. Lyra drifted down to the frozen floor, her ice storm calming but not disappearing. When she looked at Helena, there was no fear left in her violet eyes. Only determination. What are we going to do? The child asked. Helena smiled, feeling the familiar weight of impossible odds settling around her shoulders like a familiar coat. We're going to teach the galaxy what happens when you threaten children under the protection of the human crown. The ice around them pulsed with anticipation, as if reality itself was preparing for war. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of the lead Thrakari vessel. Helena had seen images of Thrakari before, but never in person. The creature that stared back at her was a nightmare fusion of organic and mechanical components, flesh that shifted and flowed like liquid metal, eyes that were clearly technological implants, and appendages that seemed to serve multiple functions depending on immediate need. I am Harvester Prime Zak Dal of the Adaptation Fleet, the being spoke, its voice carrying harmonics that suggested vocal cords had been replaced with something far more sophisticated. We greet the human queen with respect and purpose. Lyra had positioned herself behind Helena's throne, her ice creations forming subtle but effective defensive barriers around the command area. The child's tactical instincts continued to impress Helena, even as her own diplomatic training screamed warnings about the creature on the screen. Harvester Prime, Helena acknowledged. An interesting title. What exactly do you harvest? Potential, Sekdal replied, its shifting features betraying what might have been amusement. The Zephyrians have informed us of your acquisition. The unbonded child. We offer terms for transfer of custody. Captain Marcus stepped forward, his hand firmly on his weapon. Not interested. The human speaks before understanding, Zekdal continued as if Marcus hadn't spoken. We do not seek to harm the child. We seek to unlock her potential, to free her from the limitations of singular existence. Behind Helena, Lyra's ice formations began to shift and grow, responding to her emotional state. The patterns were becoming more complex by the hour, as if her abilities were evolving in real time. Explain your meaning, Helena demanded. The child possesses quantum crystalline manipulation abilities. Rare, valuable, but trapped within the confines of a single biological consciousness. We offer integration, enhancement, evolution beyond the primitive limitations of individual thought. Dr. Martinez stepped closer to her scanner, monitoring Lyra's vital signs. Your Majesty, the child's neural activity is spiking. Whatever they're describing, her body is reacting to it. Helena glanced back at Lyra, whose violet eyes were fixed on the screen with an intensity that was almost frightening. Lyra? Can you understand what they're saying? They want to make me like them, the child whispered. They want to take my mind apart and spread it across multiple bodies. They think it will make me stronger. She paused, her young face creasing with concentration. They're wrong. Explain, Helena commanded, addressing both Lyra and the Thrakari simultaneously. Zekdal's features shifted into what might have been excitement. The child understands. Her abilities are linked to quantum consciousness, the manipulation of reality at the molecular level through directed thought. Alone, she is limited by biological processing power. Integrated with our collective, she could reshape entire star systems and lose herself completely in the process. Lyra finished. I can feel it. The way their minds connect. There's no individual thought left, just purpose without person. Helena had heard enough. The answer is no. You misunderstand the nature of our offer, Sekdal said, its tone remaining perfectly calm. This is not a negotiation. The child's abilities represent a threat to galactic stability if left uncontrolled. We have observed what happens when quantum crystalline manipulation is allowed to develop naturally. On the view screen, images began to appear. Planets covered in crystalline structures, star systems where the very laws of physics seem to have been rewritten, entire civilizations that had been transformed into something unrecognizable. The Vorthan Empire, Zekdal explained. They possessed 3 unbonded individuals with abilities similar to the child's. Within 50 years, they had reshaped their entire sector. Within a century, they had begun expanding beyond it, converting matter and energy on a scale that threatened the stability of local space-time. Commander Chen was recording everything, her tactical mind analyzing the implications. Where are they now? Extinct. We were forced to sterilize their entire sector to prevent the spread of quantum contamination. The chamber fell silent except for the subtle humming of Lyra's ice formations. Helena realized they were looking at the galaxy's solution to beings like Lyra: integration or extinction. There is a third option, Helena said quietly. Human Queen speaks of impossibilities. Control. Genuine control, not the false bonding of the Zephyrians or the absorption of your collective. Teaching Lyra to use her abilities responsibly. Zekdal's laugh was a sound like metal tearing. Individual consciousness cannot comprehend the scope of quantum crystalline manipulation. The child will eventually attempt to reshape reality according to her desires. All unbonded individuals do. All, Helena asked. Without exception. We have harvested 47 such beings over the past millennia. Each believed they could control their abilities. Each began with noble intentions. Each ended by treating the universe as their personal canvas. Helena looked back at Lyra, who was listening to every word with an expression far too mature for her age. The child was understanding the full scope of what she represented, not just to the Thrikari or the Zephyrians, but to the entire galaxy. What if I don't want that kind of power? Lyra asked suddenly. What if I just want to create beautiful things? Want is irrelevant, Zekdal replied. Power of this magnitude cannot remain idle. It grows. It seeks expression. Within 5 years, the child will begin unconsciously altering reality around her. Within 10, she will have the ability to rewrite the laws of physics within a solar system. The only question is whether that power serves the collective good or individual whim. Helena felt the weight of the galaxy's expectations settling on her shoulders, but also something else, a fierce protective instinct that had nothing to do with politics or strategy. Looking at Lyra, she saw not a weapon or a threat, but a child who deserved the chance to grow up safely. Harvester Prime, your terms are rejected, permanently. Then you choose war, Zekdal stated with machine-like certainty. We cannot allow quantum crystalline abilities to develop unchecked. If you will not surrender the child voluntarily, we will take her by force. You are welcome to try. As the transmission ended, Helena turned to find Lyra standing at the center of a complex crystalline formation that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. The child's violet eyes met hers with absolute trust. Your Majesty, Lyra said quietly, I think I know how to help. And for the first time since this crisis began, Helena allowed herself to hope. The first Thrikari assault came 3 hours later, not as an invasion but as something far more insidious. The attack ships released clouds of microscopic nanobots designed to penetrate the hull and seek out specific biological signatures. Elena watched from the command bridge as thousands of tiny metal insects swarmed against the viewport, testing every seal and joint for weakness. They're not trying to destroy the ship, Commander Chen reported from her tactical station. They're trying to extract one person. Lyra stood beside Helena's command chair, her hands pressed against the reinforced transparisteel of the viewport. Where her palms touched the material, frost spread outward in fractal patterns that somehow interfered with the nanobot's sensors. The microscopic machines struck the frozen areas and simply fell away, unable to penetrate or analyze the crystalline barrier. The ice disrupts their quantum resonance, Lyra explained, her voice carrying a confidence that had been absent hours before. They can't scan through it. Captain Marcus studied the tactical display with professional interest. Your Majesty, the child has effectively created a defensive screen using nothing but atmospheric moisture. Our best engineers couldn't design something this effective. It's not just defensive, Lyra added quietly. Watch! She pressed her other hand against a different section of the viewport and the ice patterns began to change. Instead of random fractals, they formed complex geometric shapes that pulsed with rhythmic energy. Outside, the nanobots suddenly began clustering around these new formations, drawn by some irresistible signal. She's calling them, Dr. Martinez breathed, watching her scanners in amazement. The ice is generating a frequency that overrides their targeting protocols. Within minutes, every nanobot in the swarm had adhered to Lyra's crystalline patterns. The child took a deep breath, and the ice formation suddenly contracted, crushing the microscopic machines into inert metal dust that drifted away from the ship like glittering snow. "Impossible," Henrik whispered. "She just neutralized an entire Thrakari assault with ice patterns." Helena placed a protective hand on Lyra's shoulder. "How did you know to do that? I could feel them trying to find me, like little whispers in the back of my mind, so I whispered back, but louder." Lyra's innocent explanation belied the sophistication of what she had just accomplished. The main communication array chimed with an incoming transmission. Harvester Prime Jekdal appeared on the screen again, but his features were significantly more agitated than before. "Human Queen exercises unforeseen capabilities through the child. Adaptation protocols require update." "Meaning?" Helena demanded. "The child's abilities exceed our initial assessments. Direct extraction is no longer viable. We implement purification protocol." Commander Chen's face went pale as her tactical scanners lit up with new information. "Your Majesty, they're charging some kind of energy weapon. Power signatures unlike anything in our databases." On the view screen, the lead Thrakari vessel began to transform. Its hull plates shifted and rearranged themselves, revealing a crystalline core that pulsed with malevolent energy. Helena recognized the configuration from classified intelligence reports. A planet killer, designed to sterilize entire worlds. "They're going to destroy the ship," Marcus said grimly. "Everyone on board, just to eliminate Lyra." "No." Lyra's voice was quiet but absolute. "Kai." "They're going to try." The child moved to the center of the bridge, her hands extended toward the deck plating. Where she touched, ice began to spread. Not chaotic or defensive this time, but purposeful. The crystalline formations flowed through the ship's corridors like water, seeking every corner, every junction, every critical system. "Lyra, what are you doing?" Helena asked. "Making us bigger," the child replied with serene focus. Within moments, the ice had spread throughout the entire vessel, coating every surface with a thin layer of quantum-enhanced crystal. The ship's systems, instead of failing, began operating more efficiently. The hull, reinforced with Lyra's crystalline matrix, became stronger than any armor humanity had ever devised. "Bioreadings show the ice is integrating with our technology," Dr. Martinez reported in amazement. "Not replacing it, enhancing it. Power efficiency is up 300%. But Lyra wasn't finished. The ice began to extend beyond the ship itself, reaching out into space in long, delicate tendrils that connected with nearby asteroids and debris. Slowly, impossibly, she was weaving the entire area into a single vast crystalline network. "She's building something," Chen whispered, "using the ship as a foundation." The Thrakari weapon fired, a beam of pure annihilation that should have reduced their vessel to constituent atoms. Instead, the energy struck Lyra's crystalline network and was absorbed, distributed across millions of connection points, transformed from destructive force into raw material. "The energy is becoming part of her structure," Henrik said, his voice filled with awe and terror. "She's using their own weapon to strengthen her defenses." Harvester Prime Shekdal's features on the view screen shifted through what might have been confusion, anger, and something approaching fear. "Impossibility." "Energy absorption on this scale requires collective consciousness. Individual organisms cannot..." "Cannot what?" Helena interrupted. "Cannot surpass your expectations, cannot choose their own path." Around them, Lyra's crystalline network continued to grow, incorporating more debris, more energy, more raw matter into ever more complex configurations. But despite the vast scope of her creation, the child remained herself, violet eyes focused, small hands steady, young mind clearly in control of forces that should have overwhelmed any individual consciousness. "I'm not trying to control the universe," Lyra said, addressing the Thrakari directly. "I'm just trying to protect my family." And Helena realized that was exactly what they had become. Family. Not through blood or politics or alliance, but through the simple act of one person choosing to see another as worthy of protection. The Thrakari ship began to retreat. its weapons ineffective against a defense that grew stronger with each attack. But Zekdal's final transmission carried a warning that chilled Helena to the bone. The child chooses individual over collective. Eventually, her protection will become possession. Her care will become control. They all begin as protectors, human queen. They all end as gods. As the transmission ended, Helena looked around the bridge at her crew, all of them now connected to Lyra through her crystalline network. They remain themselves, no loss of individual thought or identity, but they were also something more. Will they come back? Lyra asked. Probably, Helena admitted. But when they do, they'll find us ready. The child smiled, and throughout the ship, the ice sang with protective harmony. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And in the cold depths of space, humanity gained its first true glimpse of what evolution might look like when chosen freely rather than imposed by force.